Another issue that was raised in the audits was a lack of transparency, that the Power Authority has not done a good job of communicating. It hasn't been transparent about its finances. Fred, how do you feel about that?
Well, there are certainly things that are proprietary informations to our doing business. And I don't expect those to be released out in good fashion to the public because, again, it goes to the heart of our business model. But that said, there was a transparency issue that we've spent a lot of time as an agency in recent months negotiating and making sure that we move away from those bad practices or those poor practices to better ones that are industry standards. We hope with all of these transformations that we make, we are not the industry standard. We are the industry bar, the high bar, that we become the high watermark for the industry, that we are now the agency that the rest of the CCAs look up to. And I think we are well on our way there.
That's a pretty bold statement.
It is a bold statement, indeed.
So Kathleen, you were one of those critics talking about transparency. Give me an example or two of where you encountered the Power Authority not being transparent and how that has changed.
Well, for instance, we would, submit Public Records Act requests because we didn't necessarily think that the CEO was giving us the full story for certain issues. And then we would not hear back about the Public Record Act requests. They'd be delayed.
And you would be asking as a citizen or as a council member or what?
Citizen. This was back when I was just a member of the public,
So just a concerned climate scientist citizen.
Yeah. Like, for instance, how did the CEO get hired? So we just asked for all the documentation behind that and the applications and all that. And we just
Because your concern was, what was your concern?
As I mentioned, he was, in my mind, not qualified for the job.
So, all right.
And to me, that was a sign that maybe they might not be transparent about other things. I lost so much sleep over this, trying to figure out how I could potentially get.
So now, if somebody made a request about how you hired someone, would you provide that information?
Absolutely, yeah. And we actually have a tracking system now where we keep track of all the PRAs. We keep track of how long it takes for them to be fulfilled, and they're going to be reported back to the board and the public quarterly. That's just one example. But I'll also say that now that I'm on the other side, and now I see the information about the energy we have and our finances, I'm relieved by it, and I want to make sure that nobody else feels that way. I don't want anybody to think that we're hiding anything. Yeah. So I want to err on the side of being as transparent as possible.
Fred, you've said things are much better now than they were at the beginning, but just let's go back to the creation. How did that happen? When was it decided we're going to start now and here's the person? As I understand it, there was only one. The general counsel recommended, here's the person you should hire to be the CEO, and the board said okay, and never did any search or anything. Is that correct?
If you're insinuating that it was rushed, I would say it's fair, and it's probably right. Things were rushed, but I think there was a motivation on the part of the member agencies or prospective member agencies at the time to get this started, that indeed this was the right thing to do. And, 2.5 years later, I can say it absolutely was the right thing to do. Now, was the way in which we did it the best thing and best way to do it? Probably not. And were I to do it differently, if I had a DeLorean and went 88 miles per hour and we went back, I suppose I would do it differently indeed. But I think what's more important than that is our future and our present. Our present right now is fairly good in terms of our finances. It's remarkable in terms of how we transform the transparency of this agency and more so than anything else, just the governance of it.
So it's clear you're moving forward, you're putting the past behind you, but sometimes the past can be haunting. So I have to ask, Fred, are you aware of any kind of a criminal investigation or anything of the Power Authority?
Well, I wouldn't know if there was one, but I welcome any audit or investigation accordingly. I think that's always heightens the public attention and the awareness of the agency. I think when audits come out and say that we are, actually really impressed with how you've done, Fiscally, there's no malfeasance going on. These are important things that the public needs to know. It adds to the public trust, which is enormously important for our agency. So we're on the path to earning that back. Many moons ago when the Affordable Care Act, which is affectionately known as Obamacare, when they started, this is what I told the CEO and the COO at the time when they were hired. I gave the example of Obamacare. I said, this has, in the years since its passing, become an absolute necessity for this country. We all look at it as a good thing overall.
Okay.
But when it started, that website was so bad, enrollment was so awful, that most people thought that it was the disillusionment of our healthcare system. And it took them years, for the most part, almost a decade, to turn public sentiment and trust around. And I didn't want that to happen, and indeed it did kind of go down that road. So we are on the way back to redemption now.
Kathleen, as a former critic, are you aware of any investigations or anything into not audits, but like a criminal investigation?
At one point, I was aware of investigations into former actors in the agency who are no longer there anymore.
And
I don't know the status of them.
the status, but there were inquiries. Okay. All right. Well, anyway, it hopefully won't impact either of you two.
Yeah, no, I know it's not going
But anyways,
to.
thanks. It's kind of a fascinating. The goals of what you're trying to do and the problems you've encountered. It's a pretty fascinating story, and thanks for coming on and sharing it.
Well, we appreciate you allowing us the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for watching OC World.